If you're moving to Viera and you picked a neighborhood because someone told you the schools are great, stop, because great schools and your kid being zoned for great schools are two completely different things. And the line between them can literally be one street. I've watched families move to Viera, get settled in, feel good about everything, and then find out 3 weeks before school starts that their address isn't zoned where they thought it was. That's not a small mistake. That's a "this is why we moved here" mistake. So let me walk you through how this actually works before you sign anything. Here's something the listing photos won't tell you. 2 houses on the same road in Viera can feed into 2 completely different schools. Same zip code, same HOA, different school, and most buyers don't find this out until it's too late to matter. Okay, here's what we're going to cover. 1, Viera school zones are not drawn out the way you'd expect. The neighborhoods don't map neatly to the schools. The streets do, and that distinction matters more than most people realize. 2, there are 2 high schools serving Viera families right now, and depending on which side of the certain roads you land on, your experience will be different. I'll break down what that actually looks like. 3, the zone boundaries shift. Brevard Public Schools redistricted before, and it can happen again. I'll tell you how to protect yourself from that. 4, there's a specific step that you should take before you fall in love with that house, not after. That takes about 90 seconds and could save you a major headache. 5, elementary and middle school zones are a whole separate conversation from high school, and most people only research one of them. We're going to talk about all 3 levels. Stay with me. If you're doing serious research on a move to Viera, the next 8 minutes are worth your time. So here's the thing about Viera. When people research it from out of state or even from across Florida, they see the same thing. High rates on school review sites, strong test scores, newer buildings, good facilities. And all of that is genuinely true. Viera is genuinely in a well-resourced school district. But here's where the expectation and the reality start to pull apart. People assume that because they're buying in Viera, in a nice, planned community, in a newer development, that they're automatically getting the specific school they saw in the ranking. And that's not how it works. Brevard County is a large school district. The school zone lines in Viera are drawn geographically, and they run through the middle of what feels like one continuous community. You can be inside Viera boundaries, inside the same master planned area, inside a neighborhood that looks and feels identical to the one across the road, and you're in a different school zone. Nobody talks about this part, but the reason it matters so much in Viera specifically is because Viera grew fast. The development happened quickly and in phases, and the school infrastructure had to keep up with it. That means the school lines sometimes follow roads, canals, or community boundaries that don't have obvious logic to someone looking at a map from the outside. Let me give you a real scenario. Say you're looking at 2 homes. Both are listed as Viera. Both are in a master plan community. Both are 3 or 4 miles from the same high school. One of them feeds into Viera High. One feeds into Rockledge High. Same price point, same general area, completely different high school assignment. That's a real situation I walk buyers through regularly, and here's what makes it more complicated. Elementary and middle school zones don't always follow the same lines as the high school zone. So you can't just figure out the high school and assume the younger grades line up. You have to check each level independently. This is the part that surprises people the most. They'll spend weeks researching the high school, feel confident, buy the house, and then realize the elementary school their kids would attend is one they never looked at. So let's talk about how this actually breaks down. For high school, the main dividing line in the Viera area sits roughly along Wickham Road and the Duran Golf Club corridor, but it's not perfectly clean. And that's the problem with describing it in general terms. The honest answer is you have to look at the specific parcel address, not the neighborhood name, not the zip code, the actual address of the house. Viera High School, which opened in 2014, serves a large portion of what people think of as Central Viera. It's a newer campus, strong academics, strong athletics. Rockledge High serves portions of West Viera and some developments that sit closer to the boundary. Rockledge High has its own long-standing reputation and programs. It's not a lesser school, But if someone moved to Viera specifically for Viera High and then ended up zoned for Rockledge instead, that feels like a miscalculation, and I'd rather you not make that miscalculation. At the middle school level, you're primarily looking at Kennedy Middle, which serves a large portion of Viera, and you'll also want to verify whether your address pulls into that attendance zone or gets routine routed somewhere else. For elementary, there are several schools that serve different parts of Viera: Manatee Elementary, Quest Elementary, and others, and the lines between them are genuinely granular. We're talking about a few streets making the difference. And here's where people get this wrong. They look up the community name on a school reviews site. They see a list of schools associated with that community and they assume those schools are guaranteed. What those sites are actually showing you is which schools are nearby and which schools home in that community are zoned for, not necessarily yours. Before I keep going, I want to briefly introduce myself, because if this is the first video of mine you've watched, you may be wondering who you're taking notes from. I'm Carrie Leota. I'm a real estate agent here on the Space Coast, and I specialize in helping people relocate to Brevard County, which is the county Viera sits in. I also run a private Facebook group called Moving to Brevard County, Florida. There are people in that group who are exactly where you are right now, doing the research, asking the questions, trying to get it right before they commit. And there are people who already made the move and are sharing what they actually found when they got here. If you want to be inside that conversation, scan the QR code on the screen and come join us. The questions that people ask in there are the real ones, and you get real answers. All right, let's get back to school zones. Advice 1 is verify the address before you're falling in love with the house. Here's the single most practical thing I can tell you. Brevard Public Schools has a zone lookup tool. You'll go to the district website, you type in the actual street address of the property, and it'll tell you clearly which elementary, middle, and high school that address is assigned to. Do this before you schedule a showing. Do this before you spend a Saturday driving through the neighborhood, and do this before you start imagining life in that house. Because here's what happens when you don't. You get emotionally attached, you walk through the house, you love the layout, you love the yard, you can picture your life there, and then when someone tells you the school zone isn't what you thought, you're now making a compromise from a place of attachment instead of a place of clarity. Those are two very different decisions. The lookup takes about 90 seconds. Use it first. And while you're at it, do it for every house on your short list, not just the one that looks the best in photos, because sometimes the house you weren't as excited about on paper is in the exact zone you wanted, and that changes the math entirely. Advice 2 is understand the zone lines can change and plan for that. Nobody talks about this part, and it's important. Brevard Public Schools has gone through redistricting before, because recently when Viera High was newer and the population in certain areas had grown enough to trigger rezoning, it can happen again. If enrollment numbers hit a threshold, if the district decides it needs to rebalance, your address can change zones. I'm not telling you this to scare you, I'm telling you this because I've seen families make a decision based on school zone, hold that property for 3 or 4 years, and then find themselves in a different zone than the one they bought into, without having moved an inch. So what to do with that? A few things. First, let me ask, how long the current zoning has been stable for that address you're looking at? If it just got reassigned recently, that's worth knowing. Second, look at where the school is relative to the house. Proximity matters. If the school is genuinely close to your address, you're less likely to get bounced to a farther school in a redistricting. Third, and this is for families who have a longer planning horizon, check whether the district has a publicly available growth projection or boundary studies. Brevard is a growing county. There are plans in motion. It's worth knowing what's on the table. Zone stability isn't guaranteed anywhere, but being informed about it means you're not being surprised by it. Advice 3, don't evaluate schools in isolation, evaluate the full pipeline. Here's something that comes up a lot in these conversations, and I want to say it directly. A lot of people relocating to Viera are focused almost entirely on the high school. That makes sense. High school feels like the finish line, the credential, the thing that matters for where a kid ends up next. But elementary and middle are where the foundations get built. and a weak middle school experience heading into a strong high school is a rough transition. When you're reevaluating school zones in Viera, look at the pipeline. Which elementary feeds into which middle and which middle feeds into which high, because they don't always follow the same geographic logic, and if you're moving with younger kids, you want to know the full path, not just the destination. This is the part that surprises people. Sometimes the elementary zone and the high zone don't feel like they belong together on a map. An address might be zoned for a closer elementary school, but a farther high school, or vice versa. Just verify each level. And beyond the zone, talk to people who are actually inside these schools. Not review sites, not rankings, real parents, real teachers, real coaches. My Facebook group is a good place to start that conversation, but also look for community events, school board meetings, local forums. The people doing the daily drop-off are the ones who know what's actually happening inside those buildings. Rankings tell you where things were. People inside the system tell you where things are. Let me say something for a second that goes slightly beyond school zones because I think it's the thing underneath all of this research. People who are moving to Viera, seriously considering it, doing the work, are usually not just choosing a house. They're making a calculated bet on a place. They're betting that this community is going to give them what they came for. And for most people, a big part of that bet is their kids' experience. So when somebody asks me about school zones, what they're really asking me is, am I going to feel like I got it right? And I can't guarantee that. Nobody can. But what I can tell you is that doing the verification work I've described, address by address, pipeline level, with eyes open about redistricting, puts you in the best possible position to make a call you can stand behind. The families I've seen feel most settled here aren't the ones who got lucky. They're the ones who asked the hard questions before they signed. All right, let me bring this home. Viera is a genuinely well-served community when it comes to education. Brevard Public Schools are a solid district. The facilities in this area are newer and the resources are there. That part is real. What's also real is that the zone map doesn't follow the neighborhood branding. It follows streets, roads, and coordinates that the district drew for their own logistical reasons. And if you buy without verifying, you may get exactly what you came for, or you might find out there was a gap between the assumption and the reality. Use the district's address lookup. Check all 3 levels, understand the pipeline, ask about zone stability, and talk to people who already are living it. That's the whole thing. It's not complicated, but it does require you to do the step that most buyers skip because they trusted the listing description. If you want to be around people who are already having these conversations, asking these exact questions, sharing what they found when they got here, scan the QR code and join the Facebook group. It's called Moving to Brevard County. I'll see you in there, and I'll see you in the next video.